The Houston Ballet started modestly, but they've grown to international prominence.
In 1955, there were a group of Houstonians who decided it was time to not just sit around and wait for the touring ballet companies to come through town, but to go ahead and start Houston's own ballet company. So a group of about 30 or 40 people were the founding members, founding trustees of what was then called, I think, the Houston Foundation for Dance, and for a number of years was simply a school. Though the company did at one point operate sort of as the official ballet company of the Houston Grand Opera. So the students in the school would dance in some of the opera productions.
Tatiana Semenova served as the first artistic director.
In the early days, it was, I assume, a lot like other small groups.
In 1967, they put on a production of Giselle and hired leading dancers from New York to come dance the lead roles, and that was sort of the big test. Let's see if we can really pull it off, and are we ready to have our own company? Well, Nina Popova was brought in as the second director, and that was in the early 60s because Semenova, the board began to feel, was too interested in just a school, and they wanted it to develop more into a company. Actually, the first two directors of the Houston Ballet were both women who had danced with Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. So they were Russian trained, and of course in those days a lot of the dancers in those companies were Russian, and if they weren't Russian they had changed their names to make it sound like they were Russian.
The ballet started performances at Jones Hall.
In the winter of 1969, in February, they started the professional company, hired a group of I think 16 or 17 dancers. The first performances were in Huntsville, Texas, and in May of that year, they made their debut at Jones Hall in Houston. So the Houston Ballet was then in existence as a real professional company.
Jones Hall was a shared venue, which proved challenging.
When Jones Hall was built in the early 60s, it was built like a lot of municipal theaters around the country. Let's do one new big multi-purpose theater, and all the arts organizations can share it, and it'll work for everybody. And of course what we've actually learned is that those kinds of theaters haven't worked very well for anybody because they tried to be everything to everybody.
In those days, we would literally sit in a room, all the organizations represented, and fight it out, who would get what weekends. You had to call the Civic Center office to book that day 3 years in advance, each day.
Touring opportunities helped fill out the performance schedule.
In the early days, the company toured a fair amount, a lot of it regional touring, but toured a fair amount in order to have enough work to keep a group of dancers together.
The ballet put on a variety of productions, even in its early years as a company.
When the company first started, they were doing mixed rep programs and short ballets. They did a number of Balanchine ballets in the early years. In 1972, I think, so it was only the third or fourth year of the company, they did the first full-length ballet, and it was Nutcracker.
Classical ballets could really take a physical toll on the dancers.
Sleeping Beauty, for example, has an awful lot of individual roles, and it's 4 acts. It's a prologue through Act 3. And I remember touring Sleeping Beauty with maybe in a larger company you would do 1 or 2 roles in a night, but in a smaller company you did 6 or 8. And I remember going down to the stage, and every dancer had a whole string of costumes over their shoulder for quick changes throughout the act.
Ben Stevenson became artistic director in 1976, a position he held for 27 years.
Was known as a teacher, you know, a really great teacher and coach, so that also made him perfect to take this small regional company and really build it from the ground up.
Very funny, tried to get the best out of you, pull things you didn't think you had as far as character development, because you know, dance is very difficult, and so often you just shut off in your personality and technique takes over. So he was able to pull those kinds of things out to reach an audience member that was more human.
Stevenson had a clear vision for the company.
part of Ben's master plan, his strategy, was to establish a firm foundation in the classics, because not only does it show that the company can do these works, they are the most excellent training for the dancers to do 4 acts of Sleeping Beauty. You get put through the mill. So Sleeping Beauty and Giselle and the Nutcracker and Coppelia, Ben knew that we had to have these established in the rep if we wanted this to be a serious professional company. And so he concentrated on those. In the meantime, adding mixed bills with smaller 1-acts, his choreography and other great choreographers around the world.
In 1987, the Wortham Center became the new home of the Ballet and Grand Opera.
When the Wortham opened in 1987, we were able to do much larger productions.
The Wortham has been, answer to a prayer. I mean, literally, we leapfrog with the Houston Grand Opera, and we're in, and they're in, and we're in throughout the season.
Which of course then enabled us to be in the theater for 5 or 6 weeks in a row, as opposed to a week here and a week there.
The ballet's academy trains a number of promising dancers.
Well, our academy has about 300 students. We have students from age 4 through about 19. We have a summer session that lasts 6 weeks, and we audition around the country and internationally for students to come to the summer session. And that's when you find the students from all around the world who are interested in being professional dancers. And they usually will come to our summer session for 2 or 3 years, and then when they're 15 or so, they come and they spend the last 2 or 3 years of their training and what are the last 2 or 3 years of high school here training to be professional dancers.
Well, with each generation, the talent just escalates. So especially with the men, I'd see an increase in ability. Because for so long it's been the ballerina that was always the one that was highlighted, but I feel like our men are just incredible dancers. They're athletic, they have beautiful line, and are strong, and can do the dancing as well as the partnering, and what's asked of them is pretty amazing.
Students audition for highly coveted places in the company.
There's that one spot, and everyone's vying for that one spot. There are quite a few. I think there's 6 positions that are available at one year, from year to year. So everyone in the academy is stressed about getting that one spot or that chance to join a company and to practice what they've been training for years. It is a lifestyle, one in which you're completely dedicated to your art form, but very enriching, and here was the great chance for me to do that, and I have.
The relationship between dance company and the academy has evolved, especially after Stanton Welch took the helm in 2003.
Right now, about 40% of the company come from the academy. And with Stanton's direction, the academy and the company have gotten much more integrated. All of his ballet masters teach in the academy on a regular basis. Several of the teachers in the academy work with the company. They teach class in the company, they rehearse in the company. So there's a real closeness now of who those kids are. So our school is one of the half a dozen most important ballet schools in the United States.
A number of principal dancers have stood out over the years.
In the early days, Suzanne Longley, who was a principal dancer, I think she came with Ben. I think she actually went from Washington to Chicago to Houston. Then, of course, Janie Parker, who Ben found in Geneva. She had trained under Balanchine at the School of American Ballet, and he brought her to Houston and really made her the icon of Houston. And a Chinese dancer that Ben brought, Li Xuanxing, who danced with Janie a lot, and they were in the 80s especially and the early 90s sort of the face and the famous stars of Houston Ballet. Then Ben developed Lauren Anderson, a native Houstonian African American, and she was the first African American to be a principal dancer in a major ballet company. It was really a groundbreaking thing to have Lauren in the South having that leading role. But she went out and did work for AIDS fundraisers. She actually worked hard at making herself a personality in town.
The Houston Ballet Center for Dance, a brand new 115,000 square foot facility, is scheduled to open downtown in the spring of 2011.
The two buildings are connected. It's going to change everything. Literally, the entire organization will be right there.
It's important for Houston. I think it's important for our dance community as well as the ballet community that we're a real presence.
For a large number of people, the ballet is synonymous with the Nutcracker.
I love Nutcracker for the sheer reason that we do it every year, and it's this holiday classic, and it introduces so many people to dance, which is brilliant. I love that. But we do so many incredible works that I wish we could pull them in to see some of our mixed bills, or even some of our other full-length productions that, you know, is a story, that they can follow a story.
Many years of hard work have given the Houston Ballet a solid reputation for excellence.
Even early on, we were known as a company that could do good work and could tour and had a reputation for having solid technique.
And today it is the fourth largest ballet company in the United States in number of dancers.
We're at a place, Houston Ballet has just come into its own. We have a wonderful director who has great vision. We have great patronage. We have wonderful people that love the ballet, that support us. And we have great works that need to be seen.
And while, yes, the New York companies may be considered the peers, we dance just as well as they do. And often we look better than they do.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Postcards from Texas.
Mailman bring a postcard yesterday. Mailman bring a postcard yesterday.